Hello everyone. In this video, I will be briefing you about the FIN5063 discussion. Here the question is all about unusual growth of business. Assume you started a new business and it's growing rapidly, much faster than you believe. Is it sustainable? Would you try to slow growth? If so, how? Please explain your reasoning. Here, it is clearly stated that some XYZ person has started a new business and it is growing at much higher speed than that is expected by the business. Then, in such situation, is it possible to sustainable with the growth strategy like the unusual growth? Otherwise, you want to slow it down or not? That is the question here asked. We are supposed to give a proper reasoning for all the context, like whatever the explanations we provide for all each and every statement, we are supposed to provide proper reasoning. Say for example, let us take our general example. We have two employees who can work with at least who can solve queries of 10 people each day. So every day is a customer service company, and we hired just two people who can take 10 calls a day. And we have two people, so they can take just 20 calls per day. More than that, it will be difficult for them to handle. So in such situations, how we can handle the additional calls that we are getting? Because each extra call we get, for that we will be getting extra money paid by the client company. So any organization that is existing in the market, they want to have like get more money and more profits. That is the usual strategy they will be having. But the profit that they want to get out will be depending on the number of resources they are having. Okay, so if they get unusual, if they promise for unusual completion of work, like if they state that we can finish 100 calls in a day, it is not even a possible thing. Okay, they can't finish 100 calls in a single day because they have only two employees, and the possibility of completing by two employees is 20 calls. They can't take more than that. Even if they push hard, it can be maybe like 12 calls plus 12 calls. It can be 24 calls. If we if we consider that at least 20% extra work can be completed by the employee. So this is how the situation will be like. He is having the opportunity to get more calls. The company has the opportunity to get more calls, but here, because of the enough resources, they cannot promise the client company to take those many calls. If they want to take those many calls, they are supposed to plan resources. Lot of changes has to be done. See, for example, they have a small office setup. They have to increase office setup. That involves cost. They have to increase number of employees. It definitely increases payroll and salary bills kind of thing, and it also increases power bills. There will be a lot of changes that happens to their organization, and it is also important to know whether they continuously get these 100 calls or not. That has to be evaluated before we start making changes. So it involves a lot of cost. So if they don't plan such costs, it will be a deadly thing for them to handle such growth. So what the explanation says, the companies are often crushed by their growth. Sometimes what happens, the growth that we are getting, that crushes, because if we don't have enough resources and if we plan to handle such a unusual growth, what happens, the resources that we are having will be very low, and the customers who are expecting high about our organization, they will get usually disappointed. In such situations, what happens, they stop coming to our company and taking products or services from our company, and it definitely influences our sustainability. Our existence will be questioned there. So usually when a boom can, like what happens when a unusual growth in business happens, you might be taking in numerous commitments at once. See what happens, like we are having existing customers, for them we are providing some sort of service or products. First we are supposed to handle them. If we take unusual commitments from outside, what happens, we cannot make the existing customers, the retaining customers happy, and we cannot make the new commitments that we are making. So you are not supposed to take lucrative contracts. It will be hard to handle them anyways. Okay, so increasing number of orders, in taking like unusual contracts, not feasible contracts, that all impact your businesses. Okay, so they will be having serious impact on sustainability. So usually most of the organization plan for sustainability. They want to exist first, and they want to have smaller margins and smaller profits, which are predicted. See, we can say, like for example, this whole year we run our business for 1 year. Based on that, we understand or we predict like next year it will be 10% increase in our business strategy or 20% increase in our business. Based on that, we will be planning all our resources, like human manpower and infrastructural resources, in addition to costs, and what kind of investments we are supposed to make. All those details will be planned, and based on that, organizations make decisions about strategic growth. Okay, so if you try to handle unusual growth, what happens is it will become very difficult for the organization to pay simple day-to-day financial obligations like paying bills on time, paying salaries on time, paying to suppliers on time. This all will disappoint many people, and they might leave the organization or they might stop supporting the organization. It is always a difficult problem for the company that is handling it. So it's always important that when you expect a fast growth, when you expect a fast growth, it is very crucial that you follow some step by step approach that can help you to manage the situation. If you don't have a proper approach, it is better you stick to your strategic growth strategy, strategic goals and objectives based on which your strategies are working. Otherwise, it is always difficult for you to handle it. Even when you have a unusual growth, if you are able to control it, then you are in a better position. If you can't control it, it will be difficult. So, what many organizations do, they simply follow their strategic growth objective and attempts to complete it. And anyhow, they will be planning a growth strategy. They expect some sort of growth, which is maybe 10 to 20%, something like that. More than that will be a difficult for any organization. So let us try to understand what a usual business growth is. Like, what is simple business growth strategy that organization follow? So the strategy will be to have modest ambition. See, the ambition, like the growth they expect, what kind of growth they expect will be modest. Like it will be not extreme things. It's not going to be extreme like 200, 300% growth for the organization. It will be simply 5 to 10%, 10 to 20%, like that. They will be having a plan for increase in growth. Builds on the past. See, in the past, like last year, what happened with our organization? What kind of seasons we had? Some seasons you will be having higher sales, some seasons you will be having lower sales. Okay, so what is the overall soul sales strategy, and what is happened with their organization? Based on that, they resolve some sort of problems, and they create some best strategy to handle customers efficiently based on the past history. Okay, so past history means a lot to predict about next year. Based on that, the companies perform. They focus on core businesses. So, what are their strengths? What kind of services they can provide efficiently? To what extent they can provide those services or products that make customers feel that they got the value for which they spent. Okay, so they will be spending some sort of money, right? The customer should feel that the money is worth for those products and services. Okay, so in that context, they focus mostly on the strengths they have, core business. What is the main business they are doing? Based on that, they will be planning their growth strategy. They focus on marginal and modest gains. Marginal means, say for example, what we say margin, when you have 100 rupees product, if they sell it for 120, so 120 rupees, something like that, they get 20 rupees as profit. That is the margin we are going to get. That should be very modest, not too high or not too low. It should be a modest value. Most companies focus on efficiency and profitability. Efficiency speaks about effective utilization of the resources they are having. Say, for example, they are having limited resources. From that limited resources, they should provide all the promised products or services with high quality at best cost, at low cost. So then the efficient utilization of resources will be high. So the efficiency will be high in that context. So when the efficiency is high, what happens? They produce product at best cost and it can be sold with some larger margins. So because of selling it at a larger margin, what happens? The profitability of the organization will be increasing. So the resources has to be efficiently utilized so that we get high profitability. The risk associated with business strategy should be very low and there should be no uncertainties involved in it. So all the uncertainties has to be handled. Okay. So low risk and uncertainty will be low. So because our margin, when our margin is low and when we focus on our core business, the possibility of involving happening of uncertain things will be very low. Anyhow, market conditions will create uncertainties, but they will be very low. So in such matters, what happens? The sustainability of the organization will be high. Most of the business growth strategies will be short term or mid term. Like they will be planning for next 1 year, usual growth strategies. So, however, the expectations we can make it for long term also. But when most of the businesses, like when we take small businesses, mostly they focus more on what we can do next year, what we can achieve next year. So based on the past history, they will be focusing on coming 1 or 2 years, not more than that. So that helps them to be sustained within the area they are operating and they will maintain a basic and modest growth that they expect in the field. Okay, this is what we call an usual growth strategy of organizations. So we understood like when some sort of unusual growth happens, these kind of problems happens. Why? See, when we have unusual growth happening, it will happen when we feel like it will happen because the market is up and down, or like some because of some unusual changes in the market, which is against our expectations about the future. In such situations, if the company is greedy, if the company want to grow unusually, like by without conducting feasibility study or growth sustainability analysis, it will be like crushed by its own growth. Okay, so they will be the company will be taking unfeasible, infeasible contracts, and they take a number of orders which they cannot provide on time, like that. In such situations, what happens? The organization will suffer because of in its inability to manage its costs, get efficiency from the resources they are using. Lot of issues will be experienced as it was explained earlier. So then, how to control our growth? So whether you slow down or you handle it with required growth. So it all depends on cost, time and cost, and the quality. So here, what happens is if you have manageable costs, if you have enough cash with you, then the decision will be different. If you have enough time to handle the growth, then your decision will be different. So it all depends on what kind of growth we are getting, like, and how much time we will be having to handle that growth, and what kind of quality it need, and when it has to be completed. So however, so no company will be interested in taking unusual growth because they want they will be having some predictions about the future, right? Based on that, they will be mostly traveling. Simply here, if you see, when you get unusual growth opportunity, what you should do, you should weight it. You should weigh it against the strategies that you have created earlier. Say, for example, you stated goals or objectives. Like your stated goals or objectives. Every organization will have its own stated goals or objectives related to growth. Say, for example, next year I want to grow. I want my company to grow 20% more. So in that context, what we will be planning, we will be planning costs associated with that 20%, and we will be planning resources that are associated with that 20% growth. We additionally recruit people, we additionally bring maybe machines like computers, or if it is a product like a production company, some sort of machines like that, and they need to make some extra space to be created in the work environment, like that. Okay, so you will be implementing it. Based on that, you will be implementing it. So if you take unusual growth as a parameter, then what happens? The 20%, you have just extra 20% people, and you cannot achieve 100% growth with limited resources. That is not possible. So when you weigh what resources you have, what costs you have with the unusual growth, it will not compensate with each other. They cannot be balanced. So you should stick to your stated goals. Whatever the goals you have, whatever the objects you have, you should stick to that. So whatever the possible work you can take, that you can take, but which should be a balanced one. Ensure that your growth is sustainable. It means that the growth strategy you are following should be a sustainable growth strategy. It means that because of following your growth strategy, your organization existence should be continued. Like, because of taking unusual orders, you are not supposed to suffer your customers, you are not supposed to suffer your suppliers, and you are not supposed to uh, create issue for your employees. When these three people suffer, what happens? They leave the company. When they leave the company, your company will suffer sustainability issue and it will die in some time. You understand? So you should ensure that even whatever the situation it is, your company is alive and it is existing on the market. Okay, you see a lot of companies, they grow like huge, but all of a sudden it will fall and it lose its existence in the market. Okay, so you should ensure that your organization is sustainable. You should ensure your organization is sustainable by evaluating what kind of growth strategy you are following, what kind of orders you are taking. Next one is ability to deliver on existing client demands. So you have some sort of resources, you're already working on some sort of projects, whether your resources supporting the existing projects properly or not. First review that. Based on that, you can plan for taking new orders. First, it is important to satisfy the existing customers with you. Then you will be handling new orders and you can handle with new customers. So before you start taking new orders, it is always important for you that you are supposed to analyze how you are delivering the customer, new existing customer demands, whether you are satisfying them or not, whether you are providing proper efforts, putting proper efforts to satisfy the customer demands or not, that you are supposed to evaluate. Next one is to handle unusual growth. You will be having some sort of strategy related to staffing, recruitment, and equipment, as it was mentioned earlier. So you need to understand these two things: how your staffing and equipment needs are when you plan to take additional work. So is it possible to recruit immediately? Whether resources available immediately to recruit and handle the unusual growth, that you should evaluate. Whether equipments are readily available to install it work environment, and you can immediately start working on the new projects. Is that possible? These feasibilities should be analyzed and they are supposed to be balanced. So it is always difficult to immediately handle the unexpected things. So why? Because when you recruit some sort of people, it takes some time to train them. It takes some time to understand how the production happens or how the service has to be provided. So without proper training given to the people, it is always difficult for the organization to expect high efficiency or high performance from the employees. So when you recruit some sort of people, you are supposed to provide them proper training, and you should help them to understand how the equipments that are installed at workplace are to be used and how they have to produce the production. So it is a different case when we have enough time, but Let us assume that the time is very low because it is unusual growth that has to be satisfied within limited period. In such situations, analyzing, see, as in such situations, staffing and equipment needs will be difficult to handle. Next important point that has to be controlled is forecast your cash requirements. Okay, so liquid cash that is required with you in on your hand to handle that thing. See, most of companies suffer because of the cash issues, because of the finance issues. We cannot handle unexpected growth immediately because to work on some sort of project, we need some basic, say for example, initially you need some sort of cash reserves available with you. That is main thing. If you don't have, you should go for a finance. When you go for finance, you are supposed to pay some sort of interest on the money you got on finance. Okay. However, the client that is giving you the work, they won't pay you complete amount initially, right? They will be paying a part of payment. Some money will be given to you, and remaining all costs that has to be borne by the company. In such situation, what happens? The company, if it is don't have enough money to handle it, how it will be supporting the new requirements? So it all depends on availability of cash reserves. You are supposed to manage your cash reserves. Okay, so if you want to slow down, based on whether you decide to, if you decide to slow down your business, consider your business goals. If you have a small business goal, focus on that. Based on that, you are supposed to perform. So you will be slowing down your opportunity. Okay, if you have, if you feel that taking new orders will be issuing, like will be issue to your growth strategy, then reduce that. Understand ability to deliver. What you can deliver, that has to be delivered. So you cannot take new orders. Understand how many staff you have, how much equipment you have. Based on that, you take order. So this will definitely ensure that you are working according to business growth strategy. Like that. When you have cash, when you understand your cash reserves, based on that you can take your decision. If you take unusual decision without money, it is not possible to complete it. Okay, financial analysis very important. As a part of that, let us see. See, you are supposed to analyze the receivables and payables. See how the cash flow happens. That is very important to understand. Cash flow is very crucial for any business analysis. Now you see receivables. Receivables are something like you have a customer, you have a customer, you gave him product or service, but he promised you to pay the money next year. Okay, you are going to get money in future for the completed product or service. That is what we call a receivable. Payments, you got production, like the supplier has supplied you raw material and you will paying him in some time, like maybe next year you will be paying him. Like, say, understand that you got a product or service that you paid, that you already given it delivered to the customer will be paying you money next year. So to complete that product or service, you got some raw material from a supplier and you will be paying him in next year. So when you get money from the client, you'll be paying it to the supplier. This is the scenario it happens usually in business productions, business management. Here, what we say is, if you have enough time to pay your payables and enough time to very less time, see. I will make it simple. Usually, the receivables time should be low and the payable time should be more. In that context, you will be having more cash reserves. Like what we have to pay, that should be having long time. What we should get, that should be having a small time, less time. So if you get money in 5 days and you are going to pay it in 20 days, you'll be having 15 days grace period where you will be having cash, more cash reserves, which can be utilized for some other purposes. In that way, if you have enough time, based on that time, you will be making a decision. The controlled costs and control debts. So whatever the activities, day-to-day operations we do, it involves a lot of costs. It involves both fixed and variable costs. Based on the costs that involve every day for your organization, if you can afford, you can take new orders. Otherwise, you will be sticking to your regular thing, regular format or regular strategy. Control debts. So if you have more debts, you will be suffering with paying interest. So it's a regular process. If we have debts, we have to pay them interest. If your debts are increasing, what happens? The promise to pay interest will be more. That will make you suffer. Okay. So to what extent you can take debt, you should rely on the same thing. If you take more debt, you will suffer. So ensure that you have a controlled debt. To control debt, your growth should be a controlled one. Okay, risk versus potential gain. So how much risk you are taking, what benefit organization is going to get. These are some important elements, the growth elements that has to be controlled. S- Say, for example, you have a unusual growth. Whether to go with unusual growth or to slow down, it all depends on these elements. If you properly understand them, you can mention 4 or 5 points among these, and you can address the question. So simple, to make it simple, final conclusion, I will tell you that you have an unusual growth. To simply handle it, it is not possible for any small organization to handle it. So what you will do, you will be slowing down your growth because of these factors. To have to focus on planned goals, to ensure that your organization growth is sustainable, to ensure that existing customers are satisfied, to ensure that the efficiency of staff and other resources are achieved, to ensure that your cash requirements are met with the objectives of growth. These are very key things. Just understand the topic and properly address the question. If you made some any mistake, handle it. Thank you.